Hey everyone, welcome. I want to go over a new course that I have just created. It is called Bass-Cabulary. The reason I called it Bass-Cabulary is because, as I'll explain to you here in a few minutes, it's going to go over the basic vocabulary that I believe that any bassist that's striving to be in a professional environment, touring, studio, playing at your local church or house of worship, those kind of scenarios, it's things that I believe you should know as you're growing and developing as a bass player. But before I get into the actual course, I kind of want to give you a background knowledge as to who I am and what I've been able to do in my career. And that'll give you some insight as to why I created this course. So I started playing, I'm going to date myself now, in the 90s. So I'm a little bit, got a few gray hairs in here. But I started playing in the 90s in middle school. Loved the bass, always loved the tone and what it brought to music. And so shortly after that, I developed my ear and started playing in church, my local church. And I grew up listening to, I didn't listen to a lot of Motown or R&B type stuff. What I grew up listening to, because I was in a church environment, was a lot of gospel music. My ear gravitated toward that style. It was chord progressions. It was the rhythms. It was very different than other music that was church music. Kirk Franklin came out in the 90s. Fred Hammond was out. Commission was out before that. The Winans, the Clark Sisters, John P. Key. All these are people that I grew up on listening to their styles and the players that played that music. And so I also listened to some stuff in the CCM realm, Christian contemporary music, but that's what I grew up on. And so when I moved to Florida, I got a chance to actually do what was part of my dream, which was to actually, at some point in my life, play with a gospel group and do gospel music. So I started off playing for a choir at the University of Central Florida where I was studying. And then that's where I met a really good friend of mine, Byron Chambers, who many people may know as Mr. Talkbox, who's done stuff, amazing work with Bruno Mars and a lot of other artists. But I played in his dad's gospel quartet group. So we had lots of great times, and honestly, I learned a lot musically, and I got to lay down the low end for their band, got to hear a lot of groups going to GMWA, Gospel Music Workshop of America, and Bobby Jones' show. And then in 2004 or 5, the church that I was playing at had a lot of gospel acts come through that we got to back up as a band. So those were great experiences. But it wasn't until 2007 when I moved to Nashville, Tennessee with my wife that I actually got to live out the fullness of that dream that I had as a young boy starting out on bass. And that dream was to tour and do a lot of studio sessions and stuff like that and writing. So in Nashville, I got to connect with people that I listened to when I was a child, as most children do. They listen to artists and they dream of playing with them. But I got to play with Nicole C. Mullen, CCM artist. Got to do a small stint with Toby Mac. My brother-in-law, coming off American Idol Season 8, Danny Gokey, he got a country deal, played with him for some years. And Group 1 Crew was a group that was coming up before I went to Nashville. They were doing hip-hop within that CCM realm. Now Blanca's doing her amazing thing as a solo artist. So I got to play with those among others. I think I said Nicole C. Mullen. And then in the country genre, I got to play with a few artists, notably a stint that I did with Scotty McCreery, who won American Idol Season 10. And even within country music, you have a lot of bluesy, I'll say bluesy because gospel lends into bluesy playing as well. So that's a little bit about my background. But in all of these settings, I did not see sheet music. maybe once or twice. And I'm not saying that sheet music does not have its place, but it was not the mode of communication. It was numbers. It was numbers and using your ear. And so this course is designed from a standpoint of what would I have wanted somebody to have taught me from the beginning if I was learning and growing and trying to be a professional musician. Because a lot of what I learned on the fly. So let's take a look at this course itself. Bass-Cabulary is your basic and intermediate vocabulary as a bass player. On the screen, you're going to see what this looks like when you go to basscabulary.com. You have a shopping cart, and then when you click on Bass-Cabulary in the shopping cart, you're going to see this. And you're going to see a little write-up that I put up here with the course having 28 instructional modules covering scales from the basic foundations all the way through the 7 modes. So it escalates pretty quickly from beginner to intermediate. So if you're on the fence and you're like, well, I don't need a beginner course, it will start off with what seems beginner, but it's beginner starting in a realm of number system. So it may be even different to what you've heard in the past, and then it escalates pretty quickly into what I consider intermediate. So once you're done with this course, you should be able to communicate pretty proficiently with numbers. You should be able to be communicated to in a band setting numbers, and you should have your ear more developed to hear as chords are changing what you should be playing, whether it's major, minor, or diminished, which are the main 3 chords that you will find in a major scale or a major key, a minor key. In those 2 keys, those are the 3 major scales, chords, I'm sorry. Those are the 3 major chords that you would encounter. So we talk about that kind of thing. Pricing introductory is $50 because I want you guys to share. I want you guys to get access to this and not have a pricing be a barrier. So intro price is going to be $50. Thank you guys for supporting that, and please do share as you are growing. Once you get into this course, you're going to see that the first thing you will see is a guide. It's a guide that has, as you've seen on my videos, I have overlays that I put up with the patterns and stuff like that on the screen. So I'm big into that. So this guide, when you download it, you will see has those kind of things. So you'll see what is on the screen that you're learning. This is going to be there in a format that you can actually print out, so that if you have it an area with a coffee table where you practice, or your nightstand, or your studio like this, you can have that information right there. You don't need the technology all the time. You can have your reference cheat sheet. All right, let's take a look at this course. There's that guide, and then there are part 1 and part 2 to this course. That is the meat and potatoes of this course. 28 modules, I believe I said that it is. Let's go ahead and take a look at this part 1. So here's module 1, and then you're going to see practice track. So after every module, within the module, I have created a basic play-along track that I use with a drum loop and also a very simple keypad, piano and pad, so that you can hear the tonality of a chord and you're not having boring practice time just by yourself. So you have some kind of basic play-along track so that you hear how you're interacting with the keyboard chord. All right. So every single module, will have a practice track right after it that you can play with. We'll take a look at that here in a second. But module 1 is a C major scale. So let me maximize this. If you've been on my channel before, you have seen how I have the virtual fretboard at the bottom. My previous instructional video that I made also had this, but it was years ago. The technology is far beyond now. But as I'm playing, everything is clearly shown. You won't hear what I'm playing right now because I don't have the sound on, but you will hear clearly and see clearly what is being played. So as you see, there are numbers on the fretboard, the virtual fretboard, and these numbers, everything that I'm doing in this course is based off of the C major scale. Even the minors, we reference it with C major, and then we flat whatever needs to be flatted. So, but this is the numbers referenced to a C major scale throughout the entire fretboard, and even if you were playing a 5-string. If you don't have a 5-string, don't worry. Everything that's covered is covered as if you were playing 4 strings. I like to have the 5th string as a reference, though, because a lot of players are 5-string players. You will also see, I'll pause this here. I know I said something about music, staff music, sheet music. We don't really use that. I never used it in my career. Okay, that doesn't mean that people don't use it and that they don't want to see it. So I have put on the screen, I try not to put too much to get overwhelming, but I like to give you as much as I can. And there is a staff here where you see the note on the staff and then you see the letter of the notes. So here I'm playing a C, and you will see that on the fretboard, C is being played, but the number 1 is being highlighted because it is the 1 of that scale. And lastly on the screen, you will see that I have a camera on my fret hand, on my left hand. Maybe it's overkill, but I don't think it's overkill. You are seeing it here clearly what I'm playing. However, I wanted you to be able to see how I'm stretching and how this hand is moving. So that is on screen as well for reference. As I said earlier, you have the PDF guide, and in the PDF guide are all of these type of overlays that I'm putting on the screen. These are in your reference guide. So again, once you learn, you have the reference guide printed out, or on your laptop, your iPad, you can reference it in your practice time. Now, the track that I used for this particular module, once it's done, it's practice time. It's always going to be practice time for you. That's how we get better. And when you click on this, you will see that again, I try to give you as much as I can so that you don't have to go back and forth and stuff like that. I want it all to be accessible for you right there on the screen as you're practicing. So for this practice track, I have put the 2 resources that were used in the module. They're right here on screen, and you can hit play. Again, you won't hear it now because the volume is off, but the practice track is now playing, and you can play along with it with these on the screen as reference. So I try to give as much as I can to make it very easy for you to just focus on playing and what you're learning. And this is how this course flows. So you will go all the way through. You'll notice that we have chord progressions on a few of these where I actually go into a chord progression that you may hear and how that looks and how you would flow with it. And then we talk about how to go in and out of the different chords and what you could play as options. Once you get to the next part, which is part 2, this is getting strictly into the modes. So it's escalating. I believe I said this earlier. It's escalating to intermediate rather quickly. And so with the modes, what I have done is I've gone over all 7 modes, and I made what I call mode jams. So a mode jam is going to be a practice exercise that I made for you with 2 different parts. They're patterns that you'll learn, and the idea is to make it a little bit less boring when you're learning, but so that you also have these patterns that you're training your ear with, so you get all the tonalities of that mode ingrained in your mind. So as you're growing as a player, you want to have these things embedded in your mind, your ear, and ultimately your heart when you're grooving. So I put some groove to that, 2 different patterns, and some of them are I'm not going to say very challenging. They may seem very challenging to you, but we're trying to challenge ourselves, right? We're trying to grow. So there is definitely room to grow. There's stuff that I even grew on in this journey of putting it together for you, for all of you guys. And this is it, guys. This is it. This is the course. I'm really looking forward to getting feedback from you. I want to hear how you're growing. Please check it out, Bass-Cabulary.com, introductory price right now, and share it. Share with me. Let me know how you like it and how it's helping you to develop better as a bass player as you develop your Bass-Cabulary. Thank you so much, guys.